Sex isn't intimacy. Sex is pleasurable and becomes more pleasurable when you have intimacy. Not sold? Let's rethink love, relationships, and sex. Let me seduce you. You are listening to the Linguist of Love. Welcome to the Erotic Renaissance. Hello, and welcome to the Erotic Renaissance. I'm Meg de la Torre, your Linguist of Love. Today we are talking about intimacy and theorizing how intimacy is different from sex. Today I have with me Alexis, known as Raw Real Faces on Instagram. Could you introduce yourself?
Hello, my loves. My name is Alexis, and I'm here to be one of the many catalysts of change in this ever-evolving universe. My mission is to destigmatize not only mental health, but sex, unconventional relationships, and everything in between. Too often, we feel that we need to fit perfectly into this mold that society has systemically given us, but I kind of feel like it's time for a change, so we are here to create safe spaces for all of us to share our raw, real life experiences, because that's what's important to us and our future generations, is by creating a dialogue so that we can normalize the taboo.
I'm so excited to see what you end up doing over there. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, thank you.
So Alexis and I met working at Express. We both thought the other one was the manager, and she was one of the first people to jump up and volunteer when I started Hush Hush Events. And she was the first one who was there for me as I started to have to try again and rebuild. So thank you so much for being here with me today, for being my best friend. And let's talk about intimacy.
Yes, I'm very excited.
I am too. So let's go ahead and start maybe with the previous definition.
Yes.
While the connotation of the word intimacy is, as you know, tied culturally to the definition of sex, that's only because it has been used as a euphemism. A euphemism, for those of you who might not have heard that word before, it's like a nice way of saying something more jarring or taboo or unaccepted. So instead of saying we had sex, people often say we were intimate. However, the true meaning of the word intimate is to, and I'm quoting here from the OED, is to be familiar or close in relation to another person. It brings out feelings of being cozy or private. And interestingly, the word intimacy, I don't know if you know this, appears in publication almost as frequently as it did in 1826.
Really?
Yeah, so it's not, though I'll go into the history.
I was going to say, not used as much as it should be.
Yeah, exactly. The use of the word took a really steep decline in 1831 as the world was starting to face more violence. And in around 1944, it was at its lowest use, and that was around the end of World War II. So while a historian would do a much better job talking about the correlation more completely, this connection might point to the fact that society was overburdened by the intensity and trauma of war, that little attention was given to the topic, understandably. So now, as the use of the word starts rising a little bit more, again, pretty closely to what it was in 1826, it is now that I feel like it's a great time, almost 200 years later, to start re-theorizing about this word and redefine it.
Mm-hmm. It needs to be brought up more in conversation, especially casual conversation.
Yeah, we are long overdue for a conversation about intimacy, my loves.
Absolutely.
Way overdue. So, we both were on a journey together and separately at the same time.
Yes.
During 2021, as we were figuring out that sex is different than intimacy. And I would say that our coping mechanisms kind of really came up. So we'll start with you, Alexis. Can you please describe your coping mechanism? And that's a behavior that you use to cope with difficult situations or with recurring themes in your life that you recognized and worked through last year as you were realizing that sex is different than intimacy.
Yes. Well, as you know, but others might not, I've had quite the cornucopia of relationships. And what's interesting about that is that when I say a cornucopia, it can maybe have some assume that it's promiscuous, but in fact, I really have a small amount of lovers that I can count on two hands. But I mean, everything from casual to engagements, exclusive to polyamorous. And after a lot of introspection in the past year or so, I found patterns in some of my previous coping mechanisms that were basically little band-aids that I actually wasn't really getting to the root of the issue. And previously, if I had a situation where I was upset or under pressure, I would cope by physical satisfaction from another. I would have at least one person that I could contact to basically distract myself from whatever internal turmoil I was going through at the time. I would basically pacify myself and pretend that I was okay instead of listening to my inner voice and navigating what would actually soothe my stress. After coming out of a tumultuous and abusive relationship, unfortunately, at the age of 31, I had to start from scratch and realize that my mind and my body and soul yearned for raw intimacy, not just the actual physical act of sex.
Take us through like maybe what that would look like. So, for example, from my recollection, like maybe like work might have been stressing you out or something might have come up. How would you handle that situation?
It's interesting to think about it. It's almost, it's kind of like a light goes off, but it's almost like a red light, and it kind of consumes all of your actual logic in ways. And instead of actually doing something that would help me, which would be planning business or journaling or
Resting.
talking, sleeping, my favorite thing. But instead of doing things that would actually serve my highest good, I felt the need to distract myself. And so just spending, and that could not even be in a physical form like sex. It could be distracting myself with friends and going out and going to a party or just not being present. And that is something that I've really been working on because it's been a huge detriment. It hasn't been something that has been helping me evolve as a person. So it's been really wonderful to first acknowledge that and realize, and then move forward and figure out a better plan.
So my coping mechanisms are very different. As you know, I tend to stay in relationships. I am loyal to a fault. So I stay in relationships that don't work for far too long. And I hypothesize that was probably because I was told really early on that fairy tale or happy relationships don't exist. So anytime that I was in a relationship, I think I thought that was as good as it could get. And so that mentality just forced me to stay in relationships for far too long because I was so fearful of not finding something better and only finding worse afterwards. So I'd put up with like a lot of red flags. So I just, one, I didn't believe that a better relationship could exist. And two, even if it did exist, it couldn't happen for me. So, and you know this about me because when we were friends, I was with my ex-husband. There were a lot of red flags early on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We won't even go over all of the ways.
Yeah.
But I also was trying to be a good friend and just giving
Which I
my
appreciate.
2 cents. And because you have to go through it yourself. We all do in all of our relationships. But I'm always going to be there when you fall. And I'm going to be pushing your ass to the top.
I appreciate that. I think that I wouldn't change anything.
No.
Because I had to learn for myself how to stand up for myself and how to recognize through other people's eyes what was happening to me. Because to me, that was so normal. If you're a new listener here, and haven't listened to my previous podcast, Keep It Hush Hush, I come from an abusive and neglectful home. So the behaviors that I was seeing from my ex-husband were so much better than the ones that I had lived with early on for most of my life. So I couldn't even imagine that there was better. I assumed that all men were like my father, and the ones that weren't surprised me. And so I think that to me is, 2021 helped me start seeing that, okay, sex is just a different thing than intimacy, because not that me and my husband had sex often. He didn't really enjoy sex in general. But even the boyfriend that I had after him, we had sex a lot. Mm-hmm. There were times that we were intimate, but he would leave all the time, right? Because he was married.
Unavailable.
Yeah.
He was basically unavailable.
He was very unavailable. So I think that was like a big turning point for me. And then, in 2021, I had sex with someone that I had intimacy built over the course of 2 years without sex. And so the stark difference between those experiences kind of left me reeling and realizing like, okay, like there's something very different than just what we think intimacy is.
Oh, absolutely.
So that leads us to one of our questions for the year. If you listened to the first episode, what does it mean to be intimate? So I've prepared this episode with a working definition. I lovingly crafted it for you, for us to revise over the course of the year together. But here's my working definition, and then I would love your initial thoughts. So intimacy is the exchange of energy between two or more people with the genuine intention of growing rapport, trust, and connection.
One of my favorite things that you have with this reworking is that you're talking about energy, because people are talking about that more often now, but it really is less about the physical aspect of it. Two energies, I mean, you can feel when someone walks into a room sometimes, or when you lock eyes with someone, that lightning strike, it's fantastic and it's completely different. So I just want to say I really appreciated that you said energy.
Thank you. Yeah, it's something that you and I both kind of like worked with, is like, what is energy? It's obviously something that's real and affects us. So it made sense to at least start with the inclusion of the word energy. So thank you for picking that up.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else that is an initial thought after hearing it? Or would you like me to read it again?
Read it again.
Absolutely.
I just want to hear your voice.
Oh, let me seduce you. Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
Intimacy is the exchange of energy between two or more people with the genuine intention of growing rapport, trust, and connection.
I actually have an interesting thought of, do you think that you can be intimate with someone without wanting to build a rapport? Because if you think about it, I think that people can be on the level of energy, but also having it be almost like a brisk breeze, I don't know how to describe it further, but
no, that's a really good point. I think because building is really important to me, that's why that's in this definition. Mm-hmm. But you're right. I think a lot of people might have more of a casual encounter, and making room for that in this definition would be important.
Yeah.
So thank you for bringing that up.
Absolutely.
Now that we have this working definition, let's work with the idea of intimacy in juxtaposition, which just means in comparison here, to the idea of sex. So we're going to work on thinking about intimacy and sex alongside each other. So I'm going to ask you first, Alexis, how is sex different than intimacy?
I mean, to be frank, I think sex you can almost have with anyone. And I'm not saying for me personally, because, or anyone specifically, but I think that sex can be easy depending on what mindset that you're in. I think intimacy is something, as you mentioned before, of building rapport, of really wanting to connect deeply with someone, even if it is just like a graze of the shoulder or a quick, deep eye contact, even a simple massage. But sex can be passionate and uninhibited, but it can also be simple and sweet depending on the two vessels that collide at that moment. Because that's how I envision it. It doesn't need to be man, woman, or anyone specific. It's two or more parties enjoying each other. And intimacy can be the lighthearted back scratch. It can be a full body massage, or even just getting really deep with someone and talking about their beliefs and their fears. And honestly, one of my favorites is a really solid, it might be kind of silly, but a really solid heart-to-heart hug. If you can embrace someone, even if it's just a couple seconds longer. And that's something that I appreciate too, is that it doesn't necessarily need to be with a partner. That can be with anyone who shares that energy, even if it's just for those extra few moments. It's so special to be able to share that with people, whether it's a stranger or your best friend or whoever,
Mm-hmm. I noticed that you had a lot of, and I liked this because I think I have different ones.
Yeah.
So,
of course you do.
I know, right? So I noticed that you had listed physical, like the love language of physical touch.
Mm-hmm.
You had mentioned like back scratch and things like that. And then you, of course, went into the words of affirmation love language as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned the theorizing about beliefs and like thoughts and, how the conversation.
Yes.
Right? So, to me, that was like really interesting. What is, from the list that you gave,
mm-hmm.
what is what is your love language?
What's funny is that as a triple Virgo, which that's a whole different conversation, but as someone who loves acts of service, I love to give acts of service. I love to do things for people, even if it's a small something, just to make them know that they're special. And I love getting that back, because anyone who takes even a moment of their time to do something special just for me doesn't even need to be outlandish. It just, that warms my heart in a different way that I can't describe. But I would say acts of service, and realizing as of late in the last year or so, physical touch is important, but does not mean sex. Sex is amazing. As we both know, we both enjoy it.
Oh my God. Hell yeah.
We both love. But physical touch, can be so simple and so sweet. And so that is definitely a huge love language for me. How about you?
As you know, like my love language is words of affirmation. I love words. And quality time is another one. I love quality time. If you make time to see me and we like hang out and do stuff, which I get into in my example here, it is to me such a good way to build intimacy. So for me, I kind of think that sex is an act of intimacy. Like if we're talking about where things lie, I feel like intimacy is like an umbrella term.
Mm-hmm.
And sex is an act of intimacy. So it's just like it's different than what intimacy is.
It's like a it's a vein.
Like a branch.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like how I said vein, you said branch.
So to me, it's an act of intimacy. Sex is playing make-believe with another person or other people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an act of quality time. It's an act of physical touch. It's an act of those things. It's an act of words of affirmation to me. Like during sex, if we're talking while we were having sex, like, oh my God, I know. Ooh. I want to hear you talk.
Yeah.
Like play with my mind, fuck with my mind, please. I think it's an act of intimacy. But intimacy, like I mentioned before, is an umbrella term. So to be more clear, sex is like a facet of intimacy. It's just one piece. While I might have sex as a way of being intimate with someone else, I can be intimate with the same person in many other ways that don't include the goal of intercourse.
I concur. You know, it's interesting too, when you say quality time, for me, that's almost a sort of umbrella as well, if you think about it, because quality time, you could be doing almost any and all of the love languages during that quality time. But quality time is different for other people too, because quality time for me means no phones or minimal technology. If we want to cuddle up to watch a movie or something, wonderful, but generally being present and being there, true quality time. So I love that. I agree.
You're raising a point for me. That I want to touch on. So like you can have sex and it not be intimate.
Absolutely.
So like I have had sex with someone and it felt like just sex versus like, you know, if their phone is out. I recently talked to someone, a friend of mine, and he had mentioned that his partner will have his phone out like while during sex.
Really?
Yeah. And not like to like change the music. Like he checked his phone.
Oh no.
And that happened to me, you know, with one of the people that I was with.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like nothing makes me feel less important than when we're trying to have an act of intimacy together. We're trying to do something together and the phone is more important than like growing rapport or enjoying the moment or being present with one another.
No, I absolutely agree.
So I wanted to give my examples now. So some examples of intimacy that are not sex would be a conversation about ideas, which you had also mentioned, or experiences that we've had, or experiences that we want to have, dreams, goals, beliefs, all of that stuff. Cooking together is a way of having intimacy, which we're going to do later today.
So excited.
Going on a walk together, dancing together. They're all ways of having intimacy. And, you know, those align with different love languages too. Doing a puzzle. Like think of how much you talk while like you're having to do a puzzle. It's like a quiet activity, but it gives you an opportunity to have something to do with your hands while you are having a conversation. Think of how we used to do puzzles as kids all the time. At least I did. Yeah. We don't do them anymore.
Not really, no. It's a different time where we all have our phones and other media to distract ourselves.
Some other things, watching a movie together and talking about it. I love doing that. You and I do that.
Yeah.
Eating a meal together and discussing what you enjoyed or how you might change it for the next time.
Actually, can we talk about our that was a very intimate moment that I loved.
Please,
Halloween night. Halloween. You know what I'm going to say. So it's funny because Meg and I hanging out one Halloween. We didn't dress up. We didn't go out. We didn't do anything. We literally sat on her sofa, cuddling, watching the most hellacious porns we could find.
Just extreme porn.
Yeah. Something that is not, I mean, to each their own. That's the whole thing. No judgment. There's a plethora of stuff out there and it's all good. But we were just looking up, okay, let's look up this. And I remember having the best time.
It was so fun.
Yeah. We were just giggling and cuddling and it was just so intimate, but not being sexual. And I just thought that was so beautiful to be able to have that with a close friend because I had never had an experience like that.
Yeah.
So definitely random, but fun.
And I feel like that's a great way of building intimacy with a partner, for example, is like watching pornography together and talking about like what it is that you like, or like, oh my God, I think this is hot. Or it's like, oh, this part made it a turn off for me, which it's interesting that you brought this up.
Mm-hmm.
So my last episode 2, I talk about erotic art. So, and the difference between, or actually like how we should lift pornography as a medium into, expect more from it, but also, appreciate it more as well. So I noticed even in that example that you just gave, we had talked like, cause we were watching extremes of pornography. And it was a really interesting way for, at least for me, to figure out like, okay, like I don't like this, but I'm curious about this.
Absolutely.
And we talked about it. I would love to know what kinds of intimacy you might like to experience with your future partner or partners.
One of my favorite ways of creating intimacy is going to new places and trying new things. That's something I will always be an advocate for. It doesn't matter whether it's in the same city, in a different city, a new restaurant. It can be as simple as something like that, but that's one of my ultimate favorites. But honestly, one way that I would really like to connect with a partner in the future is spiritually. And being able to connect with them on all of those levels, because I feel like a lot of times having the experiences are wonderful, but I really want to get to know you, and I want you to be so fascinated with me just how I'm fascinated with you. And I want to talk about spirituality and past lives and just all of it. I want to talk about everything under the sun, whether you believe things or not. It's just, for me, I want to have my mind expanded, and I want their mind to be open as well. So that's something that I really look forward to in the future, is more of that. Meditating together, tantric sex. I mean, all of that, just being able to level up, I guess.
I'm so happy you brought up those examples, especially the first word that came to my mind while you were speaking was travel.
Yes.
Like, so that was a way that me and my ex-husband, that was one of the ways that we were able to build intimacy, because travel and experiences were important things to both of us.
Of course.
So, like experiencing new things when you go somewhere, like you had mentioned, like a new restaurant or just like sites, like going to museums.
Yes.
Oh my God. Like,
nope.
But I am a museum girl. Like, take me to the Museum of Photography and I will be there all day, like talking about what I like about this and what I like about that. So for me, the kinds of intimacy I would like, travel is definitely on the list. Also creating erotic art with them. Right?
I'm snapping my fingers for that one, girl.
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to make erotic art with my future partner. I want to dance with him, talk about ideas and theorize, work with him on projects. I just like working on things. And so like having a partner, like think of it like when you were in high school and you had to work with someone and they just like weren't a good working partner. But then you found the person that like, okay, like I want to do projects with this partner for like the rest of my life.
You like zeroed in on them.
Yeah. Like you are fun to do projects with.
Yep.
So like I want someone who's going to be fun to do projects with. I had put traveling on here, playing games. Like I love games. And especially like
board games or any like Twister, Naked Twister.
Ooh,
I know that's.
I mean, like, yeah. But like all kinds of things, like mind games, like play make believe, like role playing, like, but also like games.
Yeah.
Because it gets your mind to work in a different way. Like if I were to play a game with you right now that we've never played before, I would learn something different about you. And I think that's the beauty of board games is like it comes in as a way to provide an opportunity for you to learn something new about somebody you thought you knew everything about.
Like strategizing. I mean, all of that. You kind of figure out the other corners of how the mind works. You know?
Yeah. And what are they like when they lose? What are they like when they're competitive? Yeah. So like, I think that those are all good ways to like build rapport and trust anyway. But there are ways that I would really like to build intimacy with a future partner. Read a book together and talking about it. On my OnlyFans, I don't know if I told you this already, but on my OnlyFans, I'm going to be doing like a little book club with everyone.
Yes.
So we're going to read an erotica.
Oh, of course. Are you going to read yours?
I mean, I will, but this one,
I was going to say one of your many.
We're going to read a really popular erotica together too. Because I feel like we have a lot to learn from it.
Marquis de Sade.
It's, oh my God, The Claiming of Sleeping Beauty.
Oh my God, yes.
Yes. So
Such
we're going to
a
be
good
doing that
one.
over there. But I think that's a really good way to also build intimacy. Again, it's like watching pornography, but for me, I just enjoy erotica a lot. So it's just another way of reading something, getting like...
I think it's a way of penetrating you without actual physical penetration.
Yes. For sure. I think also like there are parts, because I've been pre-reading it, there are parts where I just like get so turned on by, like I can't wait to provide a platform for people to get introduced to erotica. I told an erotic story over on my OnlyFans, and the messages I got back were, they made me really happy. I'll say that. That's where I'll leave it. But it's another way of exchanging, right?
Absolutely.
To come back to that working definition again, which we'll get into in just a moment, to exchange energy, right? So reading together is a way to exchange energy. Analyzing something is a way to exchange energy. Talking about it, doing a puzzle together is a way of just doing something, even if you don't talk and you're quietly doing a puzzle together, like you're exchanging energy in a different way that is more atmospheric.
Your minds are still working together, you know?
Yes, exactly. Like
It's almost like you can feel the strings that are connecting each other, even if it's silent.
Like you're working on solving something together.
Yes.
Which in reality is what partnerships do. They work on solving something together.
Yeah.
If you have children together, you work on figuring out what is the best method of raising your children. If you are in a polyamorous relationship, you know, there's bound to be tension as well. And you have to work at figuring out how to resolving that. Yeah. So like, you know, solving something together and working together on something is a good way of, I guess, testing the waters also and figuring out like, okay, like this is somebody that I enjoy working on things with. This is someone I enjoy just sitting in silence with. That's the kind of person that I would want to be with. And by working on intimacy, I can only imagine how amazing our sex will be by doing those kinds of activities together. Traveling, like exposing yourself to new cultures.
Different foods, spices, places. I mean, for me, that's one of the most exciting parts of intimacy is being able to have that.
Absolutely. And then think of how like the exciting adventures you have outside of the bedroom just make sex more amplified.
It honestly blows it out of the water because when you have those experiences, you're building the foundation to then create even more intimacy in the bedroom. Especially when it comes to verbalizing in the bedroom, because you can talk about your day or different experiences you've had. I mean, for me personally, I'm compersive, which is the opposite of jealousy.
Yeah. Do you mind talking a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course.
So to give the audience a little bit, I know you touched on it momentarily in your introduction, but you identify as polyamorous.
Yes.
Go ahead and I just want to give that context before you also talk about this.
Yeah. You know, what's funny too is that, so I would consider myself polyamorous, even though I really don't like labeling in any way, shape, or form, but I think that is what society has given the structured title of, because someone had asked, oh, well, you have relationships with multiple people. You're physically intimate with multiple people. And I kind of laughed and, or thought to myself, well, I'm actually not physical with multiple people, but I think as far as emotionally polyamorous is what I think would be more accurate, honestly. But as far as the more physical aspects or my relationships, I found that I am a compersive person, which the definition of compersion means basically the opposite of jealousy. You are actually turned on by your partner being with somebody else. And that doesn't always necessarily mean physically, but for me, I truly do get turned on knowing that my partner is enjoying themselves in any way possible. And for me to be able to share that verbally with them, I think is important, because I would rather, for me and my rules and boundaries, I like to know what's going on. It's not a don't ask, don't tell situation, because that can get sticky and messy. And for me, as long as there's open, honest communication and that I know that I am an important part of your life, I want my partner to have all the pleasures in the world that they can offer. And if it's with me, glorious. If it's not, that is more than okay too, as long as you communicate with me about it. So it's definitely different, but I find the more that we talk about these things and destigmatize them, the more comfortable people will be in opening up about themselves.
Is that something that you plan to cover initially as you return to social media and raw, real faces?
1,000%. It's very important to me. It's something that I've realized more than ever, because it's not talked about a lot. And yeah, it's just one of the many things that I would like to destigmatize.
So to bring that back to the example that you were giving us earlier, you had mentioned like talking about your day in the bedroom. So are you imagining like, because to me, the first thing I thought of was, oh, like sexting my partner. That's a great way of building intimacy, is like teasing them like throughout the course of the day. And so them telling me like punishing me, for example, for like disrupting them at work would be like so hot to me, like getting in trouble for it. And so for you, I started realizing, okay, she might be talking about like, oh yeah, I saw this really hot guy at work today, and like talking about that. So I wanted to actually understand like what kind of language were you imagining when you gave that example?
And thank you. Thank you so much for asking that. I actually was thinking of your example at the museum because I was just picturing me and my partner somewhere far, far away. And, you know, we go to a museum, enjoy the day together. And then we're back at the hotel or, you know, somewhere where we can be more physically intimate, and just kind of the use of language of, did you see that one girl at the museum with the long hair? Oh, I definitely saw her. And just kind of verbalize and play with that, because that's the whole thing. It's role playing, and it's supposed to be playful and fun, and talking about maybe someone that we both noticed, or what we might have done, like running off into the restroom or something together. Just I don't know. It's just very playful, but I find that it kind of keeps my childlike curiosity in ways. Like it keeps the energy lighthearted and fun, and it doesn't always have to be reality, you know, because it's not. It doesn't have to be reality.
Thank you for clarifying your example.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. So, now that we have the working definition, we've talked about the idea of intimacy, we've gone through examples, I want to reread my working definition and see if there are other revisions or things that you might suggest as like a co-creator with me, of things to work on as we pick it up next time. So I'm going to reread that real quick. Intimacy is the exchange of energy between two or more people with the genuine intention of growing rapport, trust, and connection. Is there anything that you would suggest for revision, or any points that you think need to be thought about more, theorized more on the podcast? What would you suggest?
Again, I just think energy being the basis of that definition is so vital, because intimacy is not about physical touch. Yes, it can intertwine beautifully.
It's a facet.
It's a facet. Thank you. But it's only such a small part of it, and it really is about connection and wanting. It's the desire to connect with someone, and I think that is the most important part about intimacy, is the intention that you're setting.
I need to think about that more. But the initial thing that came to mind is like, I had put the word intention here and put the theme of intention setting as important in the definition, because I think like what your end goal is important. And I think you can build intimacy without a positive intention, which is why it's up for conversation. So please, if you're listening, like, I want to hear your thoughts as well. This definition is for all of us to work on.
Yeah, it's so important. And it's the collective. It's about all of us really thinking deeply about it, you know?
Yeah. So I feel like, I guess a question that we can think about is, can you build intimacy with someone and the intention be for personal gain? And we don't need to answer that today.
No.
But
no.
I
definitely think that's a factor. Absolutely.
From your earlier question, it made me think about that. But then, is it actually intimacy?
That's what I was going to say, because I think that, to go back to the original, it is about the intention, and you can have ill intentions or not be on the same level as far as where the end goal is, and still have intimacy. Of course, it's just like you can have sex, but that's obviously not the world that we're trying to create, you know? Yeah. We want it to be meaningful, because being intimate with someone is very important. Having sex with someone is very important. So,
and I think like the act of building intimacy with the intention of growing trust and rapport, all of that, I think that is the thing that makes sex more fulfilling.
Absolutely.
Because you care so much about the person that you're with that I find, at least in my experience that I've had, is that it amplifies each touch. Like when you had mentioned like physical touch being just like a facet, right? I had sex with someone, but there were moments that between the times that we had sex where he would like touch my lip, like in the way he looked into my eyes. Yeah. It was different. Like we were communicating in other ways that were not verbal, and it made like the times that we had sex way more significant. And so yeah, it's, again, this is a year-long project, everybody. So please provide insight.
Yes, please.
But thank you for those notes. So you're noting the word energy and intention. So we'll explore those more in future episodes. So we are going to actually close out this episode. So thank you so much for theorizing with me about the topic of intimacy. We'll pick this up again in a future episode, and we'll talk specifically about either intention or energy, or maybe the combination of the two. Alexis and I are going to be posting a video of us making your mother's garlic bread, right?
Yes, my mother's famous garlic bread.
And talking about how our mothers introduced us to womanhood, and it will be available on Instagram. I'm really excited about that.
Yes, me too.
And so for those of you who don't know, I'm vegan, and I want to say this here, but I'll say it in the video as well. So I'm vegan, but this recipe is most definitely not.
Oh no, it is far from vegan. It is old school Italian mama garlic bread.
But to me, it's a way of building intimacy. Is I want to know what home tastes like to you. Like that's important to me as like your friend. So I will not be having a vegan version of this. I will make a vegan version alongside it.
We're going to make a vegan version as well.
That's important to me.
I'm really happy to share that with you. And
Thank
I can't
you.
wait to have all of the adventures that we're going to in the future. We got a lot in the works. So.
Oh yes. You can support Alexis by following her on Instagram at Raw Real Faces. I'll have that in the description as well. where she is inspiring others to be more authentic in the way they live their lives. And it sounds like in relationships as well. Do you want to say anything about your platform and mission?
I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me on the Erotic Renaissance. My heart goes out to every single one of you. And again, this is Alexis at Raw Real Faces, and I look forward to destigmatizing social norms to further instill safe places for all of us to be our authentic selves.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us on Erotic Renaissance. It was so good to talk about this topic with all of you. Please, you can find me on Instagram at Linguist of Love. I would love to hear your thoughts on this topic. You can also find me on Patreon and OnlyFans. It's a good way to support the podcast and my mission. Thank you immensely for joining us. I am your Linguist of Love. Let me seduce you.